The transfer rumor mill is spinning once again, and one of football's most recognizable figures could be making a dramatic return. The special one, José Mourinho, is reportedly on the verge of coming back to English football. The big question, however, is which club might welcome him next. At the same time, speculation continues to swirl around a potential new number 9 for Manchester United, with reports suggesting the club could be preparing to spend as much as £90 million. Elsewhere, Bayern Munich are said to be monitoring key players at Newcastle United, while Liverpool FC are reportedly working to strengthen their defense by targeting a new centre-back. One of the most intriguing stories involves Mourinho and Newcastle. According to reports, he has emerged as a leading candidate to replace Eddie Howe. Newcastle's Saudi ownership is believed to be searching for a high-profile manager to steady the club after a disappointing run of results. With the team currently sitting in 14th place, the hierarchy appears unsettled, and when clubs become anxious, they often look for a figure whose reputation alone can project confidence. Mourinho, undeniably one of football's most famous managers, fits that description perfectly. If the move happens, it would mark Mourinho's 5th spell in English football. At some point, repeated returns begin to feel less like comebacks and more like a long-term residency in the Premier League. Currently managing SL Benfica, according to reports, Mourinho's potential arrival at Newcastle raises an important question. Which version of the Portuguese manager would the club actually be getting? Critics argue that his tactical influence has faded somewhat during his more recent spells in Turkey and Portugal. Whether that criticism is fair or not may be beside the point. For Newcastle's owners, the appeal might be less about tactical innovation and more about the power of a globally recognized name leading the project. There is also another layer of uncertainty surrounding Mourinho's future. He has been linked with the possibility of managing the Portugal national football team if Roberto Martinez steps down after the World Cup. If that scenario unfolds, Newcastle could end up being more of a temporary stop rather than his ultimate destination. That kind of arrangement rarely provides the most stable foundation for a long-term project. Furthermore, Mourinho's history with dressing rooms is famously complicated. Bringing such a strong personality into a squad that is already struggling for confidence could be a gamble. While London is often described as a city Mourinho considers home, Newcastle might simply represent another professional opportunity rather than a personal connection. Meanwhile, another storyline is developing around Christian Pulisic, who appears to have rediscovered his best form in Italy. After leaving Chelsea FC, the American winger rebuilt his reputation at AC Milan, delivering 3 strong seasons and recording 10 goals along with 3 assists so far in the current campaign. At 27 years old, Pulisic is widely considered to be in the prime years of his career. However, Milan now face a familiar dilemma. With only 18 months remaining on his contract, they must decide whether to sell now or risk watching his transfer value gradually decline. Reports suggest both Liverpool and Tottenham Hotspur are monitoring the situation closely. Liverpool's interest makes particular sense given the uncertainty surrounding Mohamed Salah, whose contract situation could leave the club needing a right-sided attacker. Pulisic's pace, direct dribbling, and ability to attack defenders one-on-one make him an attractive option for that role. Tottenham, on the other hand, also need attacking depth, but their situation is more complicated. Without guaranteed European football next season, and with fears of a difficult league campaign, convincing top players to join may prove challenging. A transfer fee of around €55 million has been mentioned, a figure that reflects Pulisic's strong form and his current age. While he may not be considered a global superstar, he has evolved into a reliable and productive wide attacker who appears to have overcome the injury struggles that once plagued his career. For Liverpool, that price could be easily justified. For Tottenham, however, committing such a sum might be far more difficult if their competitive prospects remain uncertain. Another major transfer rumor centers on Morgan Rogers and a potential move to Manchester United. The reported £90 million price tag alone suggests that United are more than casually interested. According to reports from Sky Sports journalist Sasha Tavalieri, exploratory conversations between United and Aston Villa have already taken place, even before the transfer window has officially opened. That kind of early movement indicates a club that knows exactly what it wants and is prepared to act quickly. While £90 million might initially sound excessive, Aston Villa's current position near the top of the Premier League table gives them little incentive to sell cheaply. Rodgers' numbers back up the valuation as well. Across 116 appearances, he has been involved in 52 goals, including 13 goal contributions in the Premier League this season alone. Villa didn't invent that price tag out of thin air. It reflects both his productivity and his growing importance to the team. One key condition could shape the entire deal. Reports suggest Rodgers is only willing to move for a club that can offer Champions League football. That requirement reveals a great deal about how the player views his career at this stage. Rather than joining a long-term rebuilding project, he wants to compete on the biggest stage as soon as possible. Interestingly, there are also suggestions that Rodgers feels a genuine attraction to the idea of playing at Old Trafford, an element that would certainly suit Manchester United's ambitions if negotiations progress further. According to Sasha Tavalieri, the player himself is very open to the potential move. There is also an interesting personal connection behind the scenes. Michael Carrick previously managed him at Middlesbrough FC, and relationships like that often leave a lasting impression on a player's career. The first manager who truly believes in a young footballer tends to remain influential long after the player has moved on. Because of that history, the situation looks relatively straightforward on paper. Manchester United have a player who is open to the transfer, a clear valuation from Aston Villa, and a personal connection that could help smooth negotiations. However, there is a crucial detail that sometimes gets overlooked. United still need to secure European qualification for next season. Without that, the entire scenario changes. Morgan Rodgers has reportedly made it clear that any move would depend on playing in European competition, particularly the Champions League. That condition means United cannot afford to hesitate for too long. Their league position will ultimately determine whether the transfer becomes a realistic possibility or simply remains an ambitious idea. At just 23 years old, Rodgers would not be joining the club as a gradual project. He would arrive with immediate expectations and pressure to perform at the highest level. That raises an important question. Is £90 million the right price for Rodgers at this stage of his career? And can United's current league standing truly justify such a move? Meanwhile, in Spain, the future of Hansi Flick at FC Barcelona appears increasingly secure, at least for now. Reports from Catalan media indicate that Flick has verbally agreed to extend his contract until 2028. His agent, Pini Zahavi, is said to have already reached a handshake agreement with the club's leadership. Flick's current deal runs until 2027, meaning the proposed extension would only add an additional year. But symbolically, it represents the club's continued trust in his leadership. Joan Laporta has even spoken publicly about the club's intention to extend Flick's contract, stating that the manager is happy in Barcelona and that the club wants to keep him long-term. Statements like that from a club president usually signal genuine support, since executives rarely speak so openly about coaches they are planning to replace. Flick himself, however, appears to prefer waiting until the end of the season before signing anything officially. That could be interpreted either as professional focus on the current campaign or simply a cautious manager keeping his options slightly open. One detail that stands out is that Flick, who historically prefers shorter contracts, seems comfortable enough at Barcelona to consider staying longer. That suggests a certain level of satisfaction with the environment he has found at the club. Interestingly, he has not demanded a dramatic overhaul of the squad. Reports suggest he has requested just one specific transfer target rather than pushing for sweeping changes. Whether that reflects confidence in the existing team or quiet acceptance of the club's financial limitations remains open to interpretation. Those financial realities continue to hang over Barcelona regardless of managerial stability. The futures of several key players, including Robert Lewandowski, Andreas Christensen, and Marcus Rashford, remain unresolved. The club's economic situation, which has been a recurring challenge for years, still influences every major decision. Extending Flick's contract does not solve those issues. It simply ensures that the same manager will be guiding the team while the club works through them. In many ways, it represents stability on the bench while uncertainty continues everywhere else. something that has become almost typical of Barcelona in recent seasons. Elsewhere in the transfer market, Anthony Gordon could soon become one of the most expensive players available. Newcastle United are well aware of his growing value, and several major European clubs appear to be monitoring the situation. Reports indicate that Bayern Munich have joined the race for the 25-year-old winger. Both Arsenal FC and Liverpool FC are also believed to be interested. Bayern manager Vincent Kompany is reportedly searching for a winger with exactly Gordon's profile: direct, fast, and aggressive in attacking spaces. Newcastle's biggest concern is the growing likelihood that they could miss out on Champions League football next season. Without the financial boost that competition provides, the club's ability to keep all of its top players becomes less certain. Gordon, who might once have been considered untouchable, could suddenly become a valuable asset that the club might have to consider selling if the right offer arrives. Even if Newcastle would prefer to keep him, the realities of the transfer market sometimes leave clubs with limited choices. Arsenal's interest appears logical. Manager Mikel Arteta has been searching for a dynamic left-sided attacker for some time, and Gordon's playing style fits perfectly with Arsenal's aggressive pressing system. For a 25-year-old player entering the prime of his career, the chance to join a club consistently challenging for major trophies could be extremely appealing. Liverpool's interest is slightly more complicated. While they admire Gordon's qualities, the injury situation involving Hugo Ekitike has reportedly shifted some of the club's priorities, meaning that signing a striker may now take precedence over recruiting another winger. In reality, transfer races involving multiple clubs rarely unfold as neatly as they appear in headlines. When three clubs are linked with the same player, it often means one of them is genuinely preparing a serious offer while the others are simply monitoring the situation and waiting to see how the price develops. In many transfer windows, only one club ultimately steps forward with a decisive bid, while the rest remain observers, ready to move only if circumstances change. On the surface, interest from three major clubs sounds like the perfect situation for a player. But in reality, it is rarely that simple. Anthony Gordon is clearly talented enough to play for any of the clubs currently linked with him: Bayern Munich, Arsenal FC, and Liverpool FC. His quality is not the issue. The real concern is where he might actually play consistently. At Bayern, the attacking line already functions effectively, which could limit opportunities. Arsenal have their own established attacking system and depth on the wings. Meanwhile, Liverpool may end up prioritizing a striker before spending heavily on another wide player. Being wanted by several clubs might look ideal from the outside, but choosing the wrong destination could leave a player stuck on the bench, starting only occasionally before fading into the background. Another significant transfer story involves Rafael Leão, who is reportedly considering a departure from AC Milan. His agent, Jorge Mendes, is said to be actively exploring potential buyers. Reports suggest that FC Barcelona have already been offered the chance to sign the Portuguese forward in a deal that could involve Ferran Torres moving in the opposite direction. Although Leão has not enjoyed his most dominant season, partly due to physical setbacks, his numbers remain respectable: 10 goals and 2 assists in 26 appearances. At 26 years old, he believes the time may be right for a new challenge, and he has reportedly made that clear to Mendes. The financial aspect of the potential transfer is particularly interesting. Just 2 years ago, Milan were demanding around €150 million for Leão and refused to negotiate below that figure. Now, the situation appears to have shifted significantly. The current asking price is believed to be closer to €80 million. If Torres were included in the deal, Barcelona's effective cash payment could drop to roughly €40 million. However, nothing has been finalized yet. Joan Laporta and sporting director Deco still need to evaluate the proposal carefully. One factor working in Leão's favor is that Barcelona manager Hansi Flick has reportedly admired the player for years. Previously, Barcelona simply lacked the financial flexibility to pursue the deal. Now, circumstances may have changed enough to make it possible. There is also a potential connection to Real Madrid CF. Club president Florentino Perez is believed to be searching for another forward to strengthen Madrid's attack. Leão fits the type of explosive attacker the club often targets, but such a move would likely depend on the future of Vinicius Jr. His contract runs until 2027, and although reports suggest he will eventually renew, that renewal has not yet been finalized. Until it is, speculation about alternative attacking options continues to circulate. Barcelona are also reportedly exploring a more unconventional tactical idea, using Leão as a central striker. The concept would involve gradually transitioning him into the long-term successor to Robert Lewandowski. For a player who has spent most of his career operating on the left wing, that shift would represent a significant change in role. Whether it reflects genuine tactical planning from Flick or simply a creative justification for signing him remains unclear. Either way, the discussion appears to be more than simple rumor. Meanwhile, Liverpool are facing a much more practical issue in defense. Everyone inside and outside the club recognizes the need for another centre-back. Virgil van Dijk will turn 35 in July and has already played an exhausting 49 matches this season. Not because the schedule was gentle, but because the team lacked reliable alternatives. Concerns surrounding Ibrahima Konate and his availability have only deepened the problem. At times, having two fully fit central defenders has begun to feel more like luck than proper squad planning. Relying on one elite defender to carry such a heavy workload has shifted from strategy to necessity, and that approach cannot continue indefinitely. One name now reportedly climbing Liverpool's shortlist is Marcos Senesi of AFC Bournemouth. The 28-year-old Argentine centre-back is left-footed, calm in possession, and experienced in the Premier League. Crucially, he could be available on a free transfer after informing Bournemouth that he does not plan to sign a new contract. His representatives have been exploring options across Europe, and several clubs have shown interest. Both Chelsea FC and Manchester United have reportedly monitored the situation, although neither appears ready to move forward. Liverpool, however, seem well positioned if they decide to pursue the deal. That wording, positioned, often suggests negotiations are progressing behind the scenes, though in reality it may simply mean the club is currently first in line if talks advance. The main obstacle could still be personal terms. Senesi's wages would need to fit within Liverpool's structure before anything becomes official. From a tactical perspective, though, the move makes sense. His composure in possession and ability to defend transitions would suit the system used by Liverpool's manager. Another factor accelerating the situation is instability at Bournemouth itself. The club is also preparing for a managerial change, with Andoni Iraola expected to depart. Such uncertainty often pushes transfer decisions forward more quickly than planned. For Liverpool, the logic of the deal is clear. Acquiring an experienced Premier League defender without paying a transfer fee would strengthen a squad that has already pushed its current defensive resources to the limit this season. The only remaining question is whether the financial details can be aligned before other clubs decide to enter the race.